starting out here on the Memorial Library website, and I'm going to go ahead and do an annotation for a source that I know very well because I wrote it. So I'm going to find it on MLA, International Bibliography with Full Text. Fun fact though, it doesn't have the full text, but luckily I do. So I'm going to just go ahead and take a look here. And we can check here for full text, but it's going to take us to ILL. That's a bummer, but that's okay. Let's go back here. I want you to notice some things. One thing is that it lists this as a book, but don't be confused. This is actually an article that is in an edited book. And that's a situation where there are a bunch of articles by different people, and it has one editor who is Leslie Ormandy. So the book is The Morals of Monster Stories, Essays on Children's Picture Book Messages. And then this is what would be called a book article, okay? So it's good to try to acquaint yourself and be able to interpret what kind of source you're dealing with. Now, if I click on this, I have this sidebar and I have a cite option. You don't want to necessarily trust that this is going to give you the best advice, but in this case it actually is correct. And so you can either cut and paste this or export it. I'm going to go ahead and just cut and paste it. And the only thing I don't like about that is that when you cut and paste it into Word, it has this funky little highlighting situation going on here, and for some reason you just cannot get rid of it. Try it one more time. Yeah, it's just there for good. Oh well. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of that. We'll go up here to Format, to Paragraph. Change that to hanging and to double space, and go ahead and go down here to Times New Roman. Not my favorite font, but it is the standard for MLA. Okay, we want to double check to make sure that the citation is correct. Last name, first name, the book article title is in quotes. The book collection that it's in is italicized. Edited by Leslie Ormandy. We have the publishing company. We have the date. We have the page range with a PP in front. We have the database that it was taken off of, and then the website that is permanent for that. Okay, so that's looking good. We can go ahead and go down here, keeping the start of our annotation flush with that hanging format, and we can start thinking about what to write about this. So I want to start out by giving a little bit of a summary. Looking specifically at translation issues within, my bracelets are making a clacking sound. All right. Within the tale type Maiden in the Tower, that's the general tale type that all of those Rapunzel stories belong to. I could even say ATU 310. Melissa Mullins examines multiple variants in order to show how the mistranslation, I'm putting that in quotes because it's kind of it's something that I'm arguing. It's not necessarily like a widely accepted idea. So examines multiple variants in order to show how the mistranslation of a single word leads, actually I think I can, has led to a history of illustrating, let's see, has led to a nuanced history of illustrating the tale. Mullins argues that because of an early translation of the German word Zauberin as witch instead of the more appropriate enchantress or sorceress, the tale has often been illustrated to overly vilify the magical surrogate character, when in fact she argues this character is more complex than many of the other Grimm's villains. Mullins interestingly, Mullins begins the piece with something like creative writing to show us how varied the tale is, but then shifts to a scholarly examination of the texts and illustrations at hand. She calls on both historical texts like the infamous witch hammer and a number of critical sources Jane Borghetti. Who else do I call on in this article? I cannot remember. Might be time to look in my book. All right. I'm going to flip to, oh, there it is. Borghetti. Sites. A number of critical sources who discuss, interpretations of the tale. And finally, several sources like Peter Hunt, and Susan Gannon. This, by the way, I think could be more developed. Number of critical sources which discuss what. I mean, you can actually go into greater detail about what some of these sources are doing, because if these are also showing up in your annotated bibliography, you want to make sure that you make it really clear what the connection is. I would like to note that Dean Kennedy has started playing music across the hallway, and it is really loud, so I hope it doesn't read on this recording. Okay, so, and finally, sources like Peter Hunt and Susan Gannon. Who discuss the role of translation in interpreting children's literature and fairy tales. You can add other information. You might have a sentence where you want to talk about how, like, what kind of piece this forms in creating that foundation that you're wanting to create for your paper. But as long as you have this kind of good, pithy summary, goes into a little bit of detail, but just about what you're interested in, gives a sense of kind of how that writer is doing it, that critic is doing it, and then who they're calling attention to. And again, really feel free. I'm just kind of doing this within some time constraints, but feel free to beef up this section a little bit more. Really, those connections between other critics are really important. So, but this is a good basic annotation and how to do it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.